You need to sit down and watch Bluey right now.
But that ain't for the minds.
Whew, kids these days. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on this video, please. I would really appreciate that. Snakes have haunted the human conscience for as long as humans have been a thing. I mean, going all the way back to biblical times. In the very beginning, the snake was the scary thing, the deceptive thing. We call people we don't like snakes. And to an extent, there's a good reason. We know they can kill us, but for the most part, it's the venomous snakes that do this. But that doesn't mean that constrictors don't haunt people's nightmares as well. But unlike what popular media and the average person will probably tell you, snakes don't size you up to look to see if they can eat you. And they're not into J-Lo. Well, maybe they are, because honestly, I don't know who isn't. Oh yeah, it's called Get My Groove On. You know that's why you come. But of course, the thought of being constricted and swallowed whole, unfortunately, is a fetish for some people. But I assure you, way less people have actually witnessed this firsthand than you probably imagine. In fact, in 2017, Akbar Salabiro was the first person officially documented in history to have been killed and eaten by a snake and swallowed completely. I mean, like the first person 100% without a doubt, that's what happened to him. Akbar lived on a palm oil plantation and went missing one night, the night of the 24th of March, 2017, and a search team was sent out to look for him, and shortly after, they found a very large reticulated python. It had a hard time moving because of the giant bulge that was in the middle of its stomach. The search party had cameras, they killed the snake, and they recorded what happened. And as they cut the snake open, sure enough, Akbar was inside. When situations like this happen, the only true way to know if that is actually what happened is if you have video evidence or you find the snake and cut it open. It's just like when somebody's eaten by a shark or a tiger, people assume that's what happened. They go searching, but until they find like remains inside of an animal, they never truly know what actually happened, unless of course it was witnessed. Now before I go any farther, I'm sure some of you have already commented, but Dean, there was an incident in 2002 before that of somebody being eaten by a snake. And I tell you, I know this, but the burden of proof for something like this is a very important part, because you can make all sorts of claims about whatever you want, but without the burden of proof, they're just claims. Let's go over this other story. In 2002, a group of boys in South Africa were picking mangoes. As they're walking down the trail and picking up the fruit, one of the boys is attacked. Now, the story goes is that these other boys climbed up a tree and watched as the python strangled the boy. The boy passed out, assumingly, keeled over. The snake swallowed him, and then it moved on and floated down a nearby river. Now, Dean, didn't you just say that there needs to be witnesses? True, there does need to be witnesses, but the key details to this really do make me question whether this actually happened. One, anytime you look up this story, there's no name of the boy. The farthest they go into actually IDing this kid is that it was an orphaned boy. And I understand that maybe orphans aren't their information gets lost in the weeds. I understand that. But nobody knew who this boy was. Two, only the children who were picking the fruit saw the snake. When there was a search party later on, all they said was they saw some grass that had been pushed down, and that the boy's story, the only way they could have known that this happened was if they were snake experts or they had watched it for a very long time. And that's literally the language used. So some scientist, claimed that they knew what they were talking about because of the way they explained it. You know what? It's kind of, it is what it is. Maybe that's true. It's just not really good proof to me. On top of this, the scientist who worked at one of the local, I don't know, it was a museum, he basically said it's unfortunate that it got away and they didn't want anybody to kill the snake because they wanted to put it up as a tourist attraction because they could make money from it, displaying a man-eater. And that was it. That's the story. There's a lot of questions there. and it's not official because of all of these questions. On top of it, they said that the snake was 20 feet long, and there are no African rock pythons who have ever been recorded above 19 feet. Now, doesn't mean they can't get to 20 feet, but there's too many things that don't add up for me. And there are instances in old newspapers where the local newspaper of whatever area it was claims that somebody was either killed by a snake or swallowed by a snake. Like in 1927, a 14-year-old supposedly had been eaten by an over 5-meter long reticulated python. But again, that's the only evidence. There's no name. It's just a local newspaper said that this happened. So could it have happened? Absolutely, it could have happened. Is it provable? Can we be like, yes, this absolutely 100% without a doubt happened? No, we can't. So Akbar is the first person that we can actually claim this. Until the next year, in 2018, 54-year-old Watiba in the Sulawesi. Might I have mentioned that the other attack with Akbar also happened in the Sulawesi. The Sulawesi is an island in Indonesia. She was attacked by a 23-foot reticulated python. Their gardens are a little bit like a distance from their actual house, so she went down to her garden. She was attacked, and when they finally found her, she was only about 50 yards away from where her belongings were. The villagers found and killed the snake and brought it back to the main village, where they then cut it open. This is all on video. It 100% did happen. She was intact, her clothes on, all that stuff.
But wait, there's more!
And just last year, not in the Sulawesi, but the next big island over in Jambi, another 54-year-old woman named Jara was collecting rubber in her garden when she was eaten by a 22-foot python. So, there are only 3 attacks that have ever been 100% authenticated to be a snake killing and swallowing a person. And they happened in the same basic area. Sure, they were 2 separate islands, but they're islands that are right next to each other. All of this happened within anyone's lifetime who's watching this. When I was a kid, this was like a what if they did this? Would it be crazy if a snake could actually eat a person? There was a lot of debate back and forth on whether or not human shoulders are too wide to fit into the stomach of a snake, and if the snake could open up its mouth enough. They even had a guy put a suit on and try to get swallowed by an anaconda. I'm sure a lot of you remember that.
You saw all her weight on me. I cannot move right now.
The big question to me is, throughout all of history, how come it's not until the past few years that we're hearing about this? Not only hearing about this, but actually have confirmed, documented cases. Again, I'm sure it's happened before, but how come it wasn't until 2017 and all of a sudden now there are 3 cases? When throughout all of human history, we just hear stories and no documented proof. I mean, we've had cameras for over 100 years now. Well, I honestly think it comes down to a couple of things. First, the reticulated python is indeed the longest snake on the planet. Big ones usually only top out at, and I say only, but usually top out at about 20 feet in a few rare cases. They don't usually get above that. But there are plenty of documented cases of 20 to 25 foot snakes. The largest one was actually found in Java, and it was 33 or 32 feet long. It was over 30 feet. And in the case of Watiba, the villagers had recently discovered a 27-foot python that they were trying to track down and couldn't manage. It had gotten away. So the one that ate Watiba was 23 feet. So imagine another 4 feet on top of that. Another factor is that because reticulated pythons, not only do they get big, they also spend their time a little differently than a lot of these larger snakes do. Green anacondas are the heaviest snake, and they possibly could get into the mid-20s. Some people speculate they could get close to 30 feet, but it's never, I believe 27 feet is the longest documented. That being said, they're super heavy-bodied. They really, once they get to a certain size, they need to be in the water basically at all times. Do they make their way on land? Yes, but they rarely spend their time on land. They spend their life in the water. So the chances that people run into them the same way is a lot slimmer, because reticulated pythons live not only on the ground, but in trees. They'll climb trees. And the big ones, I'm sure, spend less time in the trees. But the point is that, yes, they spend time in the water, but they spend a lot more time on the land because they're not anywhere near as heavy as the anacondas are. And snakes like African rock pythons, the biggest examples get 17 feet, which isn't small, but it's pushing on the small side of being able to actually eat a person. On top of this, they spend a good amount of time underground. So basically, I want to sum that up by saying they're one of the biggest snakes that could possibly interact with people when they are trying to find food. And the next and biggest part that kind of makes all of this fit together is that the people of Indonesia tend to be some of the shorter people on average. So like the men's average here is 5'4", and the woman, their average are 5 foot. And that's just the average. So they tend to be smaller people. I couldn't find anything on the size of any of the people who were killed. Akbar was 25 years old, and he was a man. But again, I couldn't find anything on his size. And from the pictures I've seen of these people, they're not exactly very large looking. I also think a lot of it might have to do with the fact that the population of these areas is increasing dramatically. There are more plantations, especially rubber and palm oil. And so a lot of these areas are getting cleared out further and further into these jungle habitats that these large snakes, well, they live in. And you get more people moving into farther reaches of rural areas that are not used to seeing human habitation, and these snakes are needing to find food. And you mix all of this together and, well, unfortunately, this is what's happening. On top of this, the Sulawesi breed of reticulated pythons, or I should say strain, would that be the right word for it? They are very highly sought after in the pet industry. They're known for having bright yellow heads. They're gorgeous snakes, but they are also known for being one of the biggest on average reticulated pythons. Big snakes, small people, less space for them to live. Mix all that together and you have a possible issue with man-eating snakes that we haven't really ever had. Let me know what you think about this video down below, and I will see you on the next one. See ya.